Cooling Hotline as we welcome in Avalanche General Manager Chris MacFarland. Chris, how are you this morning?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
We're doing well. We appreciate you giving us some time here on what has to be one of the busier Tuesdays of your entire year. Trade deadline coming up on Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. This is your first trade deadline as, head honcho, the GM as the Avalanche. You've obviously been in the AGM position, helping this team make trades for years now. How has this process changed up until this point this year for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest change really is just the one talking to the other team's GMs. And in past years, whether I was in Columbus or certainly my time here with Joe, we were you work close together with your staff and your pro scouts and your scouting reports and our analytics department and all that. So I think the biggest change is to actually be on the phone and being the point person making the calls and taking the calls. But I think it's still very much a group effort, to be honest.
You've made, obviously, the franchise has made a couple of trades already. Jack Johnson is back. Let me just start there before, because I do want to ask about where else you might want to go. But just having Jack Johnson back, just talk about that trade and what he brings back to the Avs.
I think he brings back a wealth of experience. I think he's a big, strong, steady defender and a trusted penalty killer. And, in talking with our coaches and our leadership group, I think there was complete agreement in that he could really help, both in terms of now because we've got some guys banged up, but Jack is also a guy that he's been around the block, and as we saw last year, if we get healthy, which hopefully we will at some point, Jack can be out of a lineup for a certain amount of time and then step in and be ready to play at a moment's notice, and I think that's not the easiest thing to do for some players, but I think, Jack is so battle tested and obviously he won with us last year. So I think it just made sense from too many angles for us.
How much does locker room fit come into these equations, going and bringing either new guys or obviously Jack coming back into a locker room where he's already pretty firmly entrenched? How does that type of intangible, right, that locker room fit play into you bringing in a team to a championship roster?
I think it certainly plays a part. I think whether it's drafting or trading or free agent acquisitions, I think obviously the player type and that fit is key. Then cap obviously, but I think our group here we've done a pretty solid job of finding those character guys and bringing guys in that we know are going to fit into our culture and are going to fit in with our leadership group who we also lean on heavily. But I think, with our guys here and going through the battles they've gone through the last couple of years, I think, Betsy can grind them, as he does and our coaches do. But I think our players have taken ownership as well, which helps really drive the internal competition piece for us. And so I think fit is really important. I think, last year, I think the Cogliano acquisition probably defines that really well, right? Because he's a fourth line, buzzsaw, tenacious, and what he brings in the room really added to our group, for last year's team and obviously carried forward when we re-signed him.
You guys are notoriously tight-lipped. Obviously, loose lips sink ships in this situation 3 days ahead of the trade deadline. I know you can't give me a name, but describe your ideal second center that you might be able to go out and get as a player. Just describe who that player might be.
That's a pretty slick way of doing it, isn't it?
How does he skate? What size is he? How old is he?
Yeah, exactly. How much money does he make? Yeah, listen, I get the question. I think honestly and I'm going to be forthright with you. We don't have a sort of we think we need a 2C or a fourth line winger. Like we're going to look to see if something makes sense, whether it's at defense or bottom six forward or middle six forward. If it makes sense from an acquisition cost and cap. I think those are the two biggest things we've got to rinse it through, because obviously, it's no secret we've been banged up this year. We're not swimming in cap space. We're certainly not swimming in draft picks. So we've got it's a challenging trade deadline for us to try and find the right fit and pieces to do it, but we're going to grind to see if we can find something that makes sense. That's for sure.
Along those same lines, with with players that you already have, what's your view of JT Comfort's season, Alex Newhook's season? Those guys have slotted in there at second center, at various times. I think Evan Rodriguez has as well. But I really do want to focus in on JT and Alex Newhook. What have you thought about how they've progressed this season?
I think JT, we know what he is. He's a consistent player for us that we've leaned on as a guy, a two-way center, right? That has been part of our power play in the past. He's been a part of our penalty kill. He's been in the three hole. He's filled in admirably this year for chunks of time. Having some chemistry now with Mikko, especially, and Alex is still a young guy that's still developing. He's clearly shown that he's an NHL player. In our middle six for sure. I think our group also feels there's still growth that's going to happen for him in his game as he gains NHL experience. He's a fast player, which fits our identity, and he can play wing, he can play center, and so I think both those guys have had really solid seasons for us, and I think that should only continue here down the stretch.
Last one before we let you go here, Chris. I'm sure your phone is hot and ringing off the hook right now. Is there anything in terms of an asset that is untouchable for you guys right now?
I will never say never. I think that's been our philosophy. I think there are certain assets that would make us hit the pause button and think really carefully, or the player coming back would need to be something that really, really excites us. Like similar, like we can look back, just take a rewind to last trade deadline. Like we gave up, second round pick and a good prospect, right, in Justin Barron for Arturi Lehkonen. I think, the fact that Lehkonen was an RFA and would be a guy that we had an element of control over made that deal attractive for us, because we knew we were giving up a future asset and a good young player in Justin Barron. I'm not sure if the player was a UFA and we felt that it would be a challenge to re-sign, that we would have been as not saying we wouldn't have done it, but the fact that it was an RFA and with an element of control for the club made it that much more attractive for us.
I did want to quickly ask, what can you say about Gabe Landeskog and his eventual return to the team?
Yeah, we're all hopeful, obviously, at some point, but it's been a tough year for him, and Gabe's grinding, and obviously he's in another stage of his rehab here. So he's doing everything he can. Obviously, he's our captain and a massive part for us. So we'll see what the next few weeks hold.
Chris MacFarland, Avalanche General Manager. Trade deadline is Friday at 1 p.m. Chris, thank you so much for your time. We'll speak to you after the deadline is over, and good luck.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Thanks for having me on, guys. Have a great day.
Chris MacFarland, Avs GM. We'll react to it on the other side. It's Altitude Sports Radio.